What's up, short attention span history nerds? I'm Mike Perry, and you're watching 10-Minute History. Here's some facts you probably already know about World War I. It was fought in Europe, started when the Archduke of Austria was assassinated, and the good guys won. But did you know that there was a Mexico-Germany alliance that planned to invade the United States of America and take back Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona from Mexico? Here's its story. The United States spent the first 2.5 years of World War I watching from the sidelines. They really didn't want to get involved because, one, transporting troops would be a hassle, and also we really didn't have a dog in the fight. Yet by early 1917, American involvement in the war looked inevitable. President Woodrow Wilson had only recently won re-election using the slogan, "He kept us out of war." But the sinking of the British ocean liner RMS Lusitania and other submarine attacks in the Atlantic helped rally pro-war sentiment in the US. Tensions grew even higher on February 1st, 1917, when the Germans resumed unrestricted submarine warfare, a policy that allowed their U-boats to torpedo ships regardless of their military status or national origin, meaning they were given the okay to sink anything that they wished to sink. American newspapers immediately denounced the move as an act of aggression. The New York Times credited it as a declaration of war upon the trade, the rights, and the sovereignty of all neutral nations. Enter Mexico. Now, no one in the United States knew at the time, but before declaring unrestricted submarine warfare, the Germans had set in motion a now infamous diplomatic scheme. In January of 1917, German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmerman had dispatched a secret letter to Heinrich von Eckart, the German minister to Mexico. The note informed Eckart that if the United States entered the war on the side of the Allies, he was to begin back-channel negotiations to strike up a military partnership with the Mexicans. The German telegram relayed that, in exchange for launching an attack on the United States, Mexico was free to annex Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. This is the actual transmission. We intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. We shall endeavor, to spite of this, to keep the United States neutral. In the event of this not succeeding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis: make war together, make peace together, generous financial support, and an understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Along with working to seal a German-Mexican partnership, Eckart was also instructed to use the Mexican president as an intermediary to flip Japan to the side of the Central Powers. The Mexican president assigned a military commission to assess the feasibility of the Mexican takeover of their former territories contemplated by Germany. The generals took the following situations into consideration while making their decision to invade. 1. Mexico was in the middle of a civil war. 2. The United States was far stronger and had a superior military. 3. They didn't trust the Germans to uphold their offer. And 4. American citizens were armed better than the Mexican military. After all, the Second Amendment upheld the rights of Americans to keep and bear arms, and keep and bear arms they did. Mexico would have to fight the United States military and its armed citizens. The decision on how or if to attack America would take some time and consideration. Now, I want to point out how far technology has progressed in less than 100 years. This is how the message was transmitted from Germany to Mexico City. Now try to follow along here because this gets a little confusing. Early in the war, the British Royal Navy had successfully severed the Germans' transatlantic telegraph cable, leaving Germany with no private communication links between Berlin and DC. But in the interest of promoting peace, the neutral United States had agreed to send encrypted German messages in exchange for a promise that they would only contain standard diplomatic instructions. With this in mind, on January 16, 1917, Zimmerman's office handed their coded telegram off to the U.S. ambassador to Germany, James Gerard. Oblivious to its content, he wired it to Copenhagen. From there, it was transmitted to London, and then to the German embassy in Washington, D.C. From there, it was transmitted to Mexico City on January 19th, where Eckhart received it. Man, that's a long, confusing way to get a message sent. Now we just use WhatsApp and a VPN. Unknowingly, the United States had just helped deliver a message that posed a grave threat to its own security, but thankfully, the Zimmerman telegraph didn't cross the Atlantic undetected. Unbeknownst to the Americans, British intelligence had been secretly tapping into the US State Department's transatlantic cables since early in the war. Then the Zimmerman telegraph was transmitted. It was easily snatched up by the Admiralty Room 40, the office of cryptographers, mathematicians, and language experts who specialized in cracking German codes. On January 17th, 2 days before the telegram arrived in Washington, a British cryptanalyst named Nigel de Grey, now that's a British name, decoded the note, recognizing its strategic value. He immediately took it to the office of Room 40's chief, Captain William Reginald Blinker Hall. Maybe he got his nickname because he had dry eyes. He asked Blinker a question: do you want to bring America into the war? Protocol demanded that Room 40 immediately share its intelligence with the British Foreign Office, but Captain Hall chose to keep Zimmerman's telegraph under wraps for several weeks. This may be a very big thing, possibly the biggest thing of the war, he told Blinky. For the present, not a soul outside this room is to be told anything at all. Hall had several reasons for biding his time. As historian Thomas Bogart notes in his book, The Zimmerman Telegram, releasing the letter would have not only revealed to the Germans that their codes were being broken, it could have also tipped off the Americans that the British were snooping on their diplomatic communication. Hall had become adept at operations to influence opinion in the United States, and he used his expertise to the hilt in the way that he chose to disclose the telegram, Bogart writes. At the same time, he did everything in his power to protect his source from the Germans and the Americans in order to ensure continued British access to diplomatic traffic from both countries. Sneaky Brits. The British hoped that the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare would be enough to draw the United States into the war. But when the program finally began on February 1st, President Wilson only severed diplomatic relations with Germany. It was only then that Hall decided to reveal his ace up his sleeve. In order to conceal the original source of the document, the British foreign officer got his hands on a second copy of the Zimmerman telegraph from when it had been transmitted between Washington, D.C. and Mexico City. Claiming they had had the original intercepted in Mexico City, they then proceeded to take it to the American Embassy in London. Sneaky Brits. But by late February, news of the communication had reached Woodrow Wilson. According to Secretary of State Robert Lansing, when the president was told of the scandalous content, he repeatedly exclaimed the words, "Good Lord!" Still unaware of the extent of Britain's eavesdropping, the United States agreed to the pass-off of Zimmerman's telegram as having been intercepted by its own intelligence services. Way to save face, America. So on March 1st, 1917, the full text of the note was published in American newspapers, while some of the country's pro-isolationist publications dismissed it as British-made fake, in other words, fake news. Others considered it the last straw for American neutrality. The thing long dreaded has come, the Los Angeles Times wrote. We are virtually at war today. The tensions only increased on March 3rd when Arthur Zimmerman admitted that he had written the telegram. Many commentators at the time expressed astonishment that the Germans could have made such a serious misstep. One popular political cartoon even depicted a copy of the Zimmerman telegraph literally blowing up in the face of German Kaiser Wilhelm II. Woodrow Wilson, meanwhile, was forced to consider whether it was finally time for the United States to enter the war. The president wavered over the issue for several weeks, but on April 2nd, 1917, he appeared before Congress and asked for a declaration of war against Germany. During his address, he cited the Zimmerman telegram as evidence that the Germans had attempted to stir up enemies against us at our very doors. Historians continue to debate just how influential the Zimmerman note was in the United States' entrance into World War I. While most agree that it helped turn public tide against Germany, they also argue that the resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare had already sounded the death knell of Americans' neutrality. For some of those who served in President Woodrow Wilson's cabinet, however, the Zimmerman telegraph was nothing short of a game changer. In his memoirs, Secretary of State Robert Lansing later wrote that the note had in one day accomplished a change in sentiment and public opinion which would otherwise have required months to accomplish. From the time that the telegraph was published, the United States' entry into the war was assured. With regard to Mexico's invasion of America and Japan joining the alliance, once the telegram was public, Mexico and Japan both declined Germany's offer of military partnership. I think they made the right decision. It hadn't been that long since the Battle of the Alamo and San Jacinto, so I'm sure that the Texans would have fought with everything they had, then moved on to New Mexico to fight there, then moved on to Arizona just to make sure all things were going well. As for Japan, I'm not sure how Mexico could have convinced Japan to join the fight. Maybe offering free chips and guacamole for life? Who knows? I do know that Japan would make itself heard a few decades later. But that's a video for another day. Well, thanks for watching until the very end. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you like short history videos with sarcasm and a little humor, consider subscribing to 10-Minute History. Click on the bell if you want to be notified when I upload my content. If you have another 10 minutes, consider checking out one of my other videos. Until next time. The United States spent the first 2.5... Already, right out of the gate? For reals, Michael, for reals? And other submarine tank... It's a submarine tank. President Woodrow Wilson had recently... Okay, come on, man, you wrote this. You know how this goes.